Happy Thursday to you guys. We are about 10 days away from Super Bowl 57. I'll be at Glendale on Tuesday, and I think we're starting to hit the lull tone of the Shields here. I think it's like, okay, can we just get them to Glendale at this point? This is probably I love how teams have a week off before Super Bowl week, but to me, this is the worst time of the NFL season. It's just mindless gibberish at this point. And really, there ain't much going on. Unfortunately, something did go on with the Eagles yesterday, and I guess we'll touch base with the Josh Sills thing a little bit. But I want to start the show with this.
Yeah.
I think Eagles fans are very knowledgeable people. I don't think they know jack shit about the Kansas City Chiefs. Because if you're underestimating that offensive line and their defensive line and their running game and their secondary, which plays a lot of man coverage, you're going to be in for a rude awakening. Like, there's a reason this team has won 73 games the last 5 years, and it ain't all because of the coach and quarterback.
Interesting. I definitely feel, well, first things first, good morning to you, Jeff, right? And I'm actually jealous about you going to Arizona, man. You're going to be hanging out in the sun. And, man.
Ain't going to be that warm tone.
Hey, they're going to the desert, man. I tell you that. It got to be better than Philly. Got to be better than where I'm at. So, you brought up a good point, right? Our Eagles fans underestimating this Chiefs team in general. Now, let's start here. I do feel that the Eagles do have the advantage, except at damn near every position group, except for the quarterback and the coach and the tight end. Travis Kelce is just a freak, and he's a future Hall of Famer. We know what he does. He's not the best blocker, but he blocks good enough. But overall, though, I think what we're hearing from fans is the fact that they're confident, and this Eagles team has given them every reason to be confident. Right? They've knocked out the best, or they've survived rather, the best defense in the NFL. So now the Philadelphia Eagles fans, the Eagles, they're operating from a place of zero fear. They fear no one, and the confidence is through the roof. And I think that's more so what it is. Maybe they are underestimating him, right? But I've always just read it as, or gauged it as a team and a fan base that probably is feeling more confident than it ever has been. So what's your thoughts on that?
And you're a fan base. You're allowed to feel as confident as you can. You can underestimate an opponent. I'm not going to tell a fan how to behave, but I just don't like how, the Eagles' defensive line is severely better than the Chiefs' offensive line. That is not the case. That is not the case at all. As a matter of fact, this may be the best offensive line the Eagles have faced all year. Let's just look at the reality of the situation. Orlando Brown's a really good player. He gets a lot of criticism, but he's a really good player. Joe Thuney's one of the best guards in football. And here's the reason why we think this, Tone. Because the Eagles have a really good offensive line. We know that. Like, you go position by position. Jason Kelce's better than Creed Humphrey, but it ain't that much better. Landon Dickerson and Joe Thuney are about the same. Trey Smith, Isaac Seumalo, I think I take Isaac Seumalo, but still, Lane Johnson's better than anybody the Chiefs put at right tackle. Let's just be honest here. And Jordan Mailata and Orlando Brown are comparable, but this is a good offensive line that protects their quarterback. It's not going to be a walk in the park, per se, against this Chiefs offensive line. But I will say this. I think the Eagles are going to get theirs in the Super Bowl because their defensive line is that good. It's historically good. I just think that this team, obviously this offensive line is better than any offensive line they've faced in a long time. Maybe Detroit is probably the last good offensive line the Eagles have faced. And that's not shaming who the Eagles have played. The Eagles have just been better than everybody. But this is good offensive line, like you said. The tight end position, you obviously got to go with Travis Kelce. He's probably going to be the GOAT when it's all said and done. Quarterback, it's funny, right? Mahomes. I hate this when people say Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback the Eagles have faced all year. They haven't really played anybody. I'm like, well, Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback anybody's faced all year. He's the best quarterback in the league, Tone to Shields. I don't understand that logic. And by the way, the Eagles have a top 5 quarterback in and of themselves. Tony Romo said to me, 2 days ago, Patrick Mahomes is really, really good, and he's already ranking Patrick Mahomes as top 5 quarterback all time. He said, Jalen Hurts is he's pretty good himself.
Yeah, you're right. That's the interesting part. The quarterback role, and you see, I think people looked at Jalen Hurts these past couple games and they kind of felt his performances were underwhelming. But because the defense and the offensive line and the run game was so dominant, he really didn't have to do too much. And that's a different scenario. But in this Super Bowl, just sticking with the trenches, just hanging out in the trenches a little longer. I'm thinking about a guy like Hassan Reddick, who's dominated every matchup he's had for the most part, right? I'm looking at Javon Hargrave, who's dominated damn near every matchup he's had. Josh Sweat. The first time we seen him stop for the most part was when he went against Trent Williams. Trent Williams kind of made him disappear.
but no one else.
But that's Trent Williams. So
yeah. Sorry, Ted.
Sorry about that, Jeff. So yeah, I'm just, again, I think it's really about confidence and the way this defensive line and the way this offensive line has played, especially the past 2 weeks, has just been on another level. You can actually make an argument that this offensive line and defensive line took their game to another level. I was doing some math, and particularly the Eagles offensive line. The Eagles offensive line throughout the season, when Jalen Hurts has played, averaged about 2.5 sacks given up on the season per game. When Jalen Hurts has played, throughout this whole playoffs, I think he's only been sacked one time, maybe not even that, if I'm not mistaken. So
it's once.
Once? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Once. So when you think about that, in 2 games played, he's only been sacked once. His offensive line is doing pretty well, even the fact that there's some injuries along the offensive line. We know Jordan Mailata is still dealing with that shoulder a little bit. I feel like that's lingering. That's not going to go away into the offseason. Then Lane Johnson with the torn adductor. His 2 bookend tackles are dealing with some pretty severe injuries, right? And I just believe this offensive line is playing on another level. I understand they have Chris Jones, right? I understand they have Chris Jones. Probably the best D tackle in the NFL. It's up there, right? He's top 5 easily. Probably top 3. Let's be totally frank about this. Him, Aaron Donald, and then we could argue about the 3rd spot. But I think this offensive line, especially Justin Kelsey, he's made Dexter Lawrence look like a ghost. You know what I mean? Eric Armstead, he made him disappear. What are some other top end D tackles that he's faced this year? The D tackle for the Tennessee Titans, he really wasn't a factor. So there's so much dominance on this offensive line. There's so much dominance on the Eagles defensive line. I just think these fans are so confident in what they've seen, and they've shown that they can handle the best of them. But again, you're right. That's not taking anything away from the Chiefs. The Chiefs are here for a reason. They're 14-3 on the regular season for a reason, right? 16-3, throughout the entire playoffs for a reason. So it's going to be really exciting to see how this game is played. I think the game will be won and lost in the trenches.
I think to your Chris Jones point, I mean, he was the Defensive Player of the Year finalist.
Right, yeah.
So he was really good. Like, we talked about Hassan Reddick a lot here and what he's done since December 1st. Chris Jones has pretty been just as good. If you think about it, I think he's had like 9 sacks since December 1st, which is insane for a defensive tackle. And look, Chris Jones had a bad year last year because the Chiefs lined him up at defensive end to cover up their lack of a pass rush. And they got Melvin Ingram. They were able to move him inside, and he dominated again. But you have George Karlaftis, you have Frank Clark, who, by the way, is like a Hassan Reddick in the postseason. The guy always just seems to make a sack. Well, snack, whatever, right? They're eating quarterbacks for lunch, Stone Shield. But regardless, this Chiefs defensive front, they did have 55 sacks this year. They were in the top 5 in pressures. It's a good defensive line. They're very opportunistic. They know how to get after the quarterback. But I wanted to add this from my conversation with Romo. The article's dropping today for CBS Sports. I'm fortunate enough to talk to Tony 2-3 times a year, and he gets to do this with me. Tony Romo said this about the Eagles offense. This is an offense that shows up in the NFL once every 15, 20 years. It's generational. You need a whole offseason to figure it out. And he said, and that still might not be enough. He said, you may need to face them 2 or 3 times to figure it out. And he said, and there was a team that faced them 3 times and they couldn't figure it out. He said, when Jalen Hurts is on that field, they can beat you in so many different ways. He said, just look at the box score numbers. Look at how they just make it look easy against the best defenses in football. And he made a great point. The 49ers had number 1 defense, and they put up 31 points on them rather easily, and we could argue that the quarterback didn't play that well. So, if you're talking about the Eagles' offense, if they win the Super Bowl, you're right. This is like greatest show on turf territory where you're going to remember how teams couldn't stop them.
That's an interesting point. Granted, in that San Fran game, they had good field position on most of those scoring drives, right? Forcing turnovers, so on and so forth. But that's not taking anything away from the offense. They did what they were supposed to do. But you bring up a really good point, right? And Tony Romo's on point. This offense, no one has really shown that they can stop it on a consistent basis because of the unpredictability of it, right? You have a guy in Jalen Hurts who's leading this RPO attack, leading this zone read attack. And it's one of the most unique run games in the NFL. Like it goes hand in hand with not just Jalen Hurts, but it goes hand in hand with this offensive line as well. Their ability to exercise that level of patience, that level of discipline required to run this offense, right? You see, some people don't consider the Eagles offense complex because of the simplicity of the RPO, because of the simplicity of the concept. But when you think about the personnel and you think about the level of discipline, the level of technique required for this scheme, that makes it difficult in and of itself. You know what I mean? So, for example, because of what Jalen Hurts is able to do, he's able to freeze linebackers. Him just being on the field, the threat of him running, he freezes linebackers. He forces linebackers to take that extra second to think, which creates running lanes. On top of that, because of the fact that you have to account for the run, it creates so many favorable matchups. It creates so many one-on-ones on the outside, with your wide receivers and your tight ends, so on and so forth. So, just the quarterback's usage, in this running game just makes it damn near impossible to stop.
And this is the other point Romo pointed out, too, when he was talking about this offense tone. You mentioned the RPO. He said there are plays where they do RPO and play action because they're not sure if Jalen Hurts is going to run or not, and he gets a lot of positive yards when he runs. And Romo pointed this out, too. The best offseason move the Eagles made was getting A.J. Brown, was getting that guy that could separate you over the top. He said, you got A.J. Brown, you got Devonta Smith on there, that's freeing up a lot of one-on-ones. And they're getting a lot of one-on-one matchups receivers typically don't get. But you have to watch for Jalen Hurts. You have to put 8 in the box, 9 in the box to watch Jalen Hurts and watch what Jalen Hurts does. And then you got that offensive line, that running game. So they can run the ball off you, but he said all Jalen Hurts has to do is fake it. And he's got a touchdown with wide receiver over the top for a big game. He said there was a reason.
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, he said there was a reason why Jalen Hurts was so good on deep passes this year because they had to stack an extra guy in the box. And he said, it's not the system. It's the system, but it's not the system. Hurts is really good too. And he said Jalen Hurts is going to be good for a long, long time because of the situation the Eagles put him in.
So let's stay there for a second, right? How, we've talked about how good this Chiefs defense is, how better than, but we're giving them more credit than most people give them, right? But as a whole, I think their defense is ranked middle of the pack as a whole.
Yeah.
So how does a defense that's ranked middle of the pack stop this offense that's considered a top 5 offense, right? Again, this RPO is so unpredictable. We've seen what this Eagles scheme is able to do to a lot of defenses, right? Even better defense. You said it yourself. The Eagles offense didn't really have the best day, and they still hung 31 on the best defense in the NFL. So if they were able to do that against the best defense in the NFL, what do we think they're going to do to the Chiefs defense, right? In your opinion, and I know you really didn't want to dive too deep into the game quite yet, but I had to ask you this because we talked about the trenches. We talked about this Chiefs defense, in particular, the defensive line not getting enough credit. I think because of the nature of this Eagles offense, this Chiefs defense is going to be on their heels throughout the entire game. What's your thoughts on just how this Chiefs defense can actually respond to this Eagles RPO system?
Well, there's twice I thought Steve Spagnuolo-led defense wasn't going to stop a high-octane offense, and he did both times. He got a Super Bowl out of it. So, yeah,
But we just said it. This isn't just any offense.
You're right, but was the 2007 Patriots just any offense either? Tom Brady threw 50 touchdowns when that wasn't a thing. And Steve Spagnuolo found a way to hold them to 14 points. But
was that the Randy Moss?
That was the first year with Randy Moss. That was the undefeated Patriots. Steve Spagnuolo beat. And look, that team was averaging 35 a game. It was insanely good. But so Steve Spagnuolo is going to come with a plan. The Eagles have to get ready for the creative blitzes and pass rushes situations he's going to do because he's got the personnel. And when you got a guy like Nick Bolton who can track a Dallas Goedert, there goes the security blanket.
Did you say that the Chiefs play a lot of man?
They do play a lot of man.
Isn't that, let's be honest, the way this Eagles offense is played, that's the kryptonite to man coverage. You turn your back on Jalen Hurts, he's gone.
But that's the thing. So I'm curious to see if he mixes up a man or if he mixes up a zone because they can do that. And look, this is what I think. It's kind of like the 49ers game. It's very simple when you think about it. Protect that quarterback. Protect Jalen Hurts. And then he can beat you over the top. Because he's going to have an extra week to rest that shoulder. Again, we get deep ball Jalen Hurts against the 49ers, Eagles might be in some trouble here. But I'm going to point this out too, Tone, with the Chiefs. I know we didn't want to get too deep in this, but I think it's kind of important. When the Chiefs hold their opponents to 27 points or less in the Patrick Mahomes era, they're 58-3.
So essentially what you're saying is this has to, in order for the Chiefs to win this game, it has to be a shootout.
Actually, for the Eagles to win this game, it'd probably be better if it's a shootout.
Interesting.
Because the Chiefs, again, 27 points is their barometer. When you go over 27, that team usually beats Kansas City because it's a shootout. Nothing against Patrick Mahomes. By the way, as great as Patrick Mahomes is, Antonio Romo called him top 5 quarterback already if he quit. Think about this. He only has a 64 passer rating in the Super Bowl.
That's a good point. See the thing about Patrick Mahomes is he's someone that when you get up on him, you have to put your foot on his neck. You got to kill him because we've seen him come back from 21-point deficits, 17-point deficits. He's magic. We've seen him, do some things, but this Chiefs offense, as good as it's been, as dynamic as Patrick Mahomes has been, they're not the same offense that we've seen in previous Super Bowl appearances. They're not as likely to beat you over the top as they used to.
Yeah. Here's the difference between this Super Bowl and the first two Mahomes was in, and Romo pointed this out. That guy is it's not Mahomes magic anymore. He's cerebral now. He knows how to read the defense. He knows his footwork's significantly better. He can pick you apart in multiple ways. That's why you're seeing so many big plays to running backs to tight ends. And the Chiefs are deep at receiver. I know they're banged up, but they're a lot deeper at receiver than they were last year. Last year it was Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. Now it's, okay, Juju could beat you one game like the AFC Championship. Marquez Valdes-Scantling was the guy who could beat you. Travis Kelce beat you every week. Jerick McKinnon, he's helped them a lot. Isaiah Pacheco. Mahomes is very cerebral now. And he knows how to adjust. But you have to get to him. You have to make sure he gets rid of that ball quick, which he's been really good at this year. It's funny how watching the Chiefs, how much different they are this year, but they're better. I feel like they're a better, deeper team than the team that lost to the Bengals last year or the team that lost to the Bucs in the Super Bowl. And those are some really good teams. That's why I'm so intrigued by this game, because the Eagles have a better roster. They're deeper. They're more talented. But the Chiefs just find a way. And I think it's really because of their quarterback and their head coach.
Yeah, we'll see how far the quarterback and the head coach can definitely take them into this game because, like you said, the Eagles are just more talented through and through. If you go position by position, they just have the edge, if you ask me, except for tight end and quarterback and obviously Big Red, the head coach. But, we're going to have the advantage soon when we bring up our guy, Kevin Boilard, man. It's going to be really, really interesting to hear his thoughts on, what's to come with this Super Bowl matchup between the Chiefs and the Eagles. It's going to be really exciting. You guys are locked in on Good Morning NFC East. He's Jeff Kerr. I'm your guy, Tone DeShields II. Keep it locked, you guys. You do not want to miss